Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to Mark and Mark in the Midday. I'm Mark Wace, along with my partner, Mr. Mark Littell, and we got ourselves a great guest today, so I'm going to throw it over to you, Country.
Well, Country Boy's known this gentleman for years because when I was with the St. Louis Cardinals, I used to go over and throw some with the baseball team, and he was one of the coaches over with UMSL. University of Missouri, St. Louis. and I actually went to school there. I know it's really shocking that I went to college, but, I actually did. I walked in the door and I kind of walked out real fast too. But, I got to know John over there, and John decided to go westward ho, and he's not only a good man, but he's a very, very good scout. He's extraordinary, I say. And he's been with the White Sox for 25 years. And he's been around the world a little bit too. He was the coach of the Greek Olympic team in 2004. He's got a book out, and it's called How and Where Will a Professional Baseball Scout Find Me? You can go to Kindle and get that. And he got his feet on the ground, and he won a really big award in 2014. It's called the Roland Heman Award. And I know Roland. I think everybody in baseball knows Roland Heman. And he's a really special guy. But John was the recipient of that, and he's got his feet on the ground. And John's just been out there in Arizona, and he's the area scout for the Four Corners. But they pull him all over the place once in a while to take a look at somebody. And since he's had his feet on the ground and he's in the war room, I'm sure, sometimes with the White Sox when they're getting ready to have their June draft here very, very shortly. John, it's so good to have you on this program. Thank you for coming on. So
no problem, Mark. Glad to be here.
Well, you got some questions from Mark, I do know, and I know one of the hardest things to do is I was in development. You're in scouting. Scouting is extremely tough to look at all these guys out here and say, hey, is this the right guy? And I know how you do it. And, I watch scouts. I just really watch how the grading systems. I know in the old days when I was, coming through the ranks, I guess scouts said, shit, he throws hard. And so they probably,
now there's science.
Like yeah, that was the science maybe back then, or, I know a Yankee scout, they used to always say, you'd go to a ball game, and I know how many you hit 2 and 3 games a day, I know, and out here in Arizona. But he've always said to me, John, I said, well, how do you know if you got a ringer out there and a winner? And he says, well, you go to games, yeah. And then all of a sudden you see this kid and you go, holy shit. So what's the prognosis, John? What's going on with scouting with John Kazanis?
Well, the key thing is I try to go out there and evaluate the players. Every young man who's playing this game has a dream, and that dream is to play professional baseball. But not every young man's tools that he possesses can play at that level. I mean, we have to look at a player and, first of all, feel what tools does he have, will they get better, and how do they fit into your organization's profile. That's the toughest thing, because I can look at a young man and say, okay, yeah, he does throw hard, but by throwing hard, is there stress on his joint that he'll break down? Does he throw hard with easiness? Is there a chance for making that even better in the future? Can he spin a breaking ball? Can he pitch? Guys can throw and be throwers, but you would like to find somebody who can throw hard and have pitchability. Pitchability is going to allow you to have less pitches per game and keep your team in the game, and you have a better chance of winning. As far as the position players, that's probably the most difficult thing, because most of these kids that you see play have never faced the velocity of what pitchers possess in the big leagues. And so you're trying to gamble in your mind, can this young man have the quickness in his hands and the hand-eye coordination to connect against a 93 to 95 mile-hour pitch? And can he accept failure because the players that he's playing against can make plays? When he was an amateur, those balls used to fall in.
Right.
John, is it tougher to project out how an 18-year-old high school senior is going to be or play down the road in 4 or 5 years as opposed to a college senior who's 20 or 21 years old?
It is more difficult for a high school kid. We'd like to have them younger because we feel like they have a wider opportunity to improve because they have yet to be set in their ways. The college kid, in most cases, what you see is what they are. There might be a smaller ceiling of improvement, a few tweaks here and there by player development, and they'll be better players. But if you can get a high school kid that can flat out dominate at the level that he's at, and he has some tools, then obviously grooming him, playing 144 games in a minor league season with a wooden bat, mentally and physically improving them to be an impact player in your team, those are most difficult players to search for.
Yeah. Well, I know everybody is talking velocity today, and we've had so many breakdowns, and I really don't want to get into that subject too far because we could keep talking all day about the breakdown part. But actually, I know this too, John. I think you're actually looking for also the athlete because it's hard to find sometimes an athlete, eye-hand coordination, and to go out there and what you said, have the pitchability and projection is so hard. And with the money involved today, it's so hard. I think a lot of high school kids, I know out here in Arizona, as you told me and as others have told me as well, they said, well, I'm not going to sign for anything under $500,000. I said, well, good luck to that, And, that's just their mindset, that baseball is loaded. But the thing about it is they too have a budget, and I do know that because I've been on the development side, and it has to work, or that's just the way it is. I know you have players that come in, and I've always liked getting a filler or a long shot guy and trying to make him a prospect. And it's hard to find the intangible out there sometimes. But what are some of the things you got? What is it? You have 29 scouts that live in Phoenix right now alone, and I think one lives in Utah. Am I right there?
There's one in Utah. There's 2 guys that live in the Tucson area, and then the rest do live in the Phoenix vicinity.
And this is your busiest time of the year because you have the June draft coming up very quickly. So us even talking to John, I'm going to tell you that, we got him at a good time, early bird right here, no games this morning, but I'm sure he's done tons of paperwork and the computer he lives by. But your feet are on the ground now. You're in New Mexico today, and you're looking at some players out there. Am I right on that? In conference play.
The Mountain West tournament is being played today. I'll have 2 games to attend, so 4 colleges, and I have a list of identified players that our scouts have turned in those players. So then I'll have an opportunity to grade out their skills, make sure they're healthy, give my opinion of what I saw in their games this weekend, and so another set of eyes on some players for our organization prior to the draft.
One thing John has said to me is that real quick is that, John, who are some of the guys that you may have signed that we might know? Because I know you've got 25 years here, but sometimes they're far and few between as well. And people always ask me, how many guys do you get to the big leagues? Well, I didn't get them to the big leagues. They got themselves to the big leagues with other help besides myself, by the way. So, but I know you've signed several people. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, every scout loves to sign players. You may have some very good talent in your area, but by the way the draft takes place, you might not have the opportunity to draft them, and other clubs do. I was fortunate to have some players taken that have made some marks in the big leagues. Mark Burley who pitched 16 years in the big leagues and recently retired. He was a 38th round pick. And Nathan Durst, who's one of our scouts and a very talented scout, first saw this young man and identified him to me. And I did the rest of the legwork and identified that with our scouting director, who felt this young man's got a chance to do something. And he did. He spent 16 years in the big leagues and threw a couple no-hitters, perfect games, and definitely would throw 200 innings a year. And
he
very
over
proud
200 games.
Yeah, and proud of the fact that this guy's not a hard thrower. This guy has great pitchability, early contact, get the ball in play, have the defense play behind you. Plus, a lot of people are not aware of this. You know, we're looking at tools of a player, but the makeup of the player is just as important than the tools. And if a young man has great work ethic and makeup and belief and has a good heart, that's the one thing that's not on our reports. There's not a box for what's inside your heart. And we have to determine, do we feel that this young man makeup internally can make him a better player and overcome adversities to become in the big leagues?
Hey, John, people tell me that the scouts don't only just look at the things that you just brought up, which is obviously their physical skills, what they do on the field and performance and how they handle themselves, but they also look at things that they're doing on the sideline, so to speak. Like, I've heard that scouts look to see, like, are the parents overly involved? Are they like helicopter parents? Does the kid ignore the coach and do his own thing, or does he look toward mom and dad or his personal pitching or batting coach? Do you guys really pay close attention to that, to see those kind of things?
Yes, we do. And in fact, we do much more than that. I mean, we maybe discuss a player that was on a high school team, or some of his teammates. We'll talk with them, or even some of the players he played against. We'll talk to other coaches that know of the player, and then he played on some summer programs or fall programs. We even have the opportunity to talk to teachers, but there's the HIPAA laws, which the Privacy Act comes into play, which is very difficult to overcome. But you know, there's so many different circumstances and situations in which some kids get caught into that's not their fault. And it might be the coaching situation or the administration. And they're put in a situation where it's a lot more difficult for them to survive. And so we feel sometimes a change of scenery is going to be a benefit to this young man. That makeup and identifying things with how a parent support or the struggle of the parent's family, and maybe he comes from a low economic situation and has to struggle through a lot of different things. The environment that he lived in, all these things play into how we try to develop this young man with player development. Not everybody comes from the same piece of cloth. So how we, do we pat him on the back or do we force him with some things? Every young man has a different trigger. We're trying to get the best we can out of every player because we love to have every single one of them contribute to the big leagues, which makes our organization sound pretty extremely talented.
Yes. I got to bring up, this is Mark and Mark on the Midday, but the one where it was John Kazanis, extraordinary scout to me and everybody else who knows John with the White Sox, been with them 25 years. The other thing, too, is John was traveling in his travels, and he always says travel safe to me, and I'm sure that's a scouting term too, but he always says travel safe, Mark, when he gets off the phone. And then, but he was going up toward Kingman. I'm sure he was probably on his way to Las Vegas, and he actually saved and helped a big cause when a van turned over with 5 people in it, a mother, father, a baby, and 2 other children. And he was over there, and he had to actually it turned over 5, 6, 7 times off of the highway, and you'd think nobody would live, but John was an aid to that. Tell us a little bit about that, John. It was interesting how you said you got into the van. So,
well, I was behind the vehicles that were on the 2-lane road. It's called White Cross Highway from Wickenburg to Kingman, Arizona. And a lot of accidents and a lot of deaths has occurred over the years there. And this van did get clipped in the left lane, which forced it in this little valley. And traveling at speeds at 70 miles an hour, this van started to flip over several different times. And at one point, I was parallel with it while I was still flipping. By the time I got out of my vehicle and got across the highway, hearing a lot of crying and screaming, got to the van. It was really smashed up pretty well. I couldn't get in the doors at all, but I was able to go through the broken windshield and get into the van. And it was a scary situation. This is where you tested to keep calm and try to be positive so that you can, do the best you can first aid wise. The mom was pinned against the dash. Dad wasn't there. The mom was traveling with the 3 kids. The baby in the car seat didn't say a peep, and the 2 younger kids were in the back part of the van, and they both were cut up, glass, and very shooken up about the situation. It took a while to do what I needed to do, to apply bandages, try to be a calming voice, try to encourage the mom that the kids were fine. You had to get the mom out of being pinned up against the dash. This was prior to Father's Day. It took about 45 minutes to 50 minutes before any other medical help could come to take care of this family. Over the years, things have gotten better. The mom had to go through some surgeries. The kids have responded well. Dad's very thankful that he has his family for Father's Day that year. They're a good group of people. They invited me to dinner, which by going to dinner with 3 young kids, I know I'm getting macaroni cheese and Miss Paul's fish sticks for dinner. But, I think when we run across situations in which we're there, how we respond is big key. My adrenaline was flowing pretty well. And, sometimes you say things to the family and the kids, even though it isn't the case, you need to put in their mind that they're going to be fine and okay, and try to allow them to get back to normal in some capacity. So I was very fortunate that there wasn't any life loss, and it gives this family another opportunity to be together and be fortunate that they are together.
Well, they were fortunate to have John Kazanis at that moment right there. I can tell you that because I say extraordinary, and that's why John is an extraordinary person as well as a scout. The other thing, too, is that timing was so important that you're so calm, cool, and collected, as we should say, to go out there and handle that situation. Let's get back, Mark. You have a question from a couple of people, don't you, on the scouting end?
Yeah, I do. And the first question actually we had asked before, but the other question that we had was, how do you find the talent? Do you go out and do you scout the talent and report it back to the clubs, or do you get leads from other folks? And one fellow asked me, how important is the gun? I mean, is velo the most important thing that gets people's attention? Are we going to see any more Mark Burleys in the future, or are we only going to see the Noah Syndergaard kind of players?
Well, how I find players is you attend games, as many as you can. You may be there to see player A, but you may see a couple other players that are younger in their class that tease you in some way, that you put them down on your follow list. And when that year comes, then you're going to go and take an opportunity to see this kid in a year or two because he's on your follow list that he teased you in some way. And when you attend tournaments, you will see a lot of good players, and they may be juniors and seniors or even freshmen in college that come across you that you say to yourself, there's something there that might end up being something special in 2 years. So you have to be very organized. You have to do a good job in taking down notes, formulating different pieces of paper, making sure you're up to date on all your different things. And I get phone calls from coaches throughout the country that I know that I've have a rapport with, and they'll say, hey, John, listen, I just saw a guy that flat out is pretty special. And if you know the person that you're talking to, and you know that they understand what you're looking for, then you know that's a good lead. Sometimes you get stuff from people that their intentions are great, but that kid may be the best player in that little town, but he's still really short, but he's the best player and it looks very good. I'll get stuff from umpires. I'll get stuff from other players. They're going to be a good barometer to tell you who was the best player they saw this year. And we can't see everything. We try to be very thorough in our area and know what we need to do. It's a very difficult chore. We're going to miss on some people, but hopefully you didn't miss on the majority of the ones that are going to be selected in the 17 draft.
Now, everyone always talks about the guys that scouts recommend and draft, like everyone will always associate Tom Greenwade with Mickey Mantle. Now, what about the guy who you recommended and either they didn't draft or he was drafted by someone else before you guys picked? Are there any names that you'd throw out there and say, if it came one more pick, we would have got that guy and, could have been something different?
Yeah, that's happened. But the thing is that you believe in your organization and the players that you take are what's best for the organization. There may be some situations in which, a high school kid was requesting a little bit more bonus money than really fit into what you wanted. Cody Bellinger is a good example who came up with the Dodgers the last few weeks.
He's a little hot right now.
Yeah, he is. And the Dodgers overpaid him in that round, and he's excelled extremely well in the last 3 or 4 years in their system. I'd love to have Cody Bellinger, all right, but that doesn't always fit within your system. And the same thing happens with other players that are taken from your organization. Jason Kipnis is a good one, who never played in the infield at Arizona State, but for somehow is an all-star second baseman with the Cleveland Indians. The philosophy of your organization, and our scouting staff does an extremely good job in identifying different players that fit what we need. Not every year you need a first baseman. You might have some weaknesses in other areas that you identify, which means you pass on him to take care of what you need for your system. We're very happy to have quality players. I saw Bryce Harper play when he was at community college in Southern Nevada. Everybody would have loved to have a Bryce Harper, but the Nationals were the first pick in that draft. And the scout in our area, Mitch Sokol, did a good job of staying on Bryce Harper because there were some questions of his makeup, but his abilities really shine extremely well. And what he's done in the big leagues is remarkable. So we're happy to see other organizations do well with the players that you've turned in, because it does still give you credibility with your organization when you had that player written up well enough that you felt he was going to be an impact player, and he does turn out to be an impact player with somebody else.
Is there a lot of pressure with the bonuses?
Go ahead.
I say, is there a lot of pressure, especially with the bonuses and the money that they sign these guys to when they draft them, and they draft them so young, especially for the high draft picks, to really get it right? Is there more pressure now than there was, let's say, 20 or 25 years ago, when the bucks for those guys weren't as big?
Definitely. I mean, we're spending millions and millions of dollars on a player who has not done one thing for your organization. There's really not another profession that gives you a lot of money before you even start it. And when you're talking about $4 or $5 million, or even millions or 500,000 or 300,000, all that adds up. And if those players that you sign don't turn out to be impact players in your organization, that hurts your system all the way through. The minor league system is not as strong, so that you can't bring up anybody to help you in the big league club, which means you probably spend money on free agency, and in turns that costs you a lot more money. And if you can't find the impact players, you're going to lose. If you lose, it trickles down through television revenue and advertising revenue and the gate and the licensing money. All that stuff starts to dwindle in some way. So the pressure of finding impact players and you paying them millions of dollars is on you. I can't look at it that way as a scout. That's something that's a higher pay grade for our scouting director and our front office staff. But you do cringe and think, we're signing a player for millions of dollars, and we all hope that this young man pans out to be very special for us.
That's a really good point, because I remember, Whitey Ball, and I played for Whitey in Kansas City and St. Louis, and we really didn't have what you'd say the biggest salaries out there, or some people would say the best teams, maybe to look at some of the other teams in the divisions. But, he put teams together that won, and it was based on, chemistry. And that's exactly what I think John's saying too, is that word chemistry comes into effect. But what's so hard about John's position here as a scout, and with all the other scouts that they have, is trying to get on that one big page and to say, is this person going to be a good fit for the White Sox organization? And, with their philosophy, because each organization has their own philosophy. The scouting directors set the tone. The general managers just come in. I mean, you've got the ownership to deal with. You've got so many variables to deal with within that organization. And, I didn't know this, but Roger Maris was from Fargo, North Dakota. I wonder where they found, Roger Maris. And, that's kind of interesting. And then, Vida Blue's way down there in the bayou, and he was back there, catching shrimp and, playing football and basketball, all state baseball, basketball, whole 9 yards, true athlete. And then you try to kick it loose and, trying to find these people. And it's tough to find the right people, the chemistry for that part. And, that's why I used to we always have, shipping and receiving, which is development. And then, shipping is the scouting department, receiving is the development part. And back in the day, we used to make a big deal out of it. Now to me, scouting is really tough. What John does is extremely tough. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of money. You're dealing with a lot of individuals, and it's very interesting. Mark, where are we at with this here?
I use a variable which is not in any scouting manual or discussed by other organizations or the game of baseball at all. I have 2 daughters. And when I look at a young man, one of the first things I kind of say to myself is, would I allow that young man to date my daughter? And if I say no, I got a red flag there. This guy better come up with some other good things, because there's something there that doesn't allow me that I would trust him with my 2 daughters.
Good.
Character.
That's classic right there. But,
Hey, John, I was just going to ask you something that actually got texted to me from one of our listeners, and it's kind of an off-the-wall question, but it's kind of interesting in the same. In 2012, Clint Eastwood did the movie Trouble with the Curve, and I'm sure you got a chance to see it or at least talk about it. How close to reality are some of the things that you see about him as a scout in that movie, and how much of it is pure Hollywood?
Well, the actor, I thought, did a great job. I mean, he's an old-school scout. And there is something about, recognizing spin or the sound of the ball off the bat, that special crack that comes into play that we hear on occasion. There was some reality that was positive that I can relate to, because I identify myself with several of the things in which he did in the movie as a character. There was some Hollywood part of it, because in today's age, if you're going to have a first-round pick, the area scout is not the only guy there near the end of the year. You've got some of your front office personnel, or you may have a national guy or your cross-checker in hitting or pitching there to watch his last action as an amateur before you select him as a first-round pick. That was the one part I was, kind of torn with it. Plus, you never saw anybody have any video. Today's game, there's a ton of video on every player. And your scouting department and your player development are going to review that video before selecting a player, because you're going to get the opinion of your pitching coordinator, your hitting coordinator, your catching coordinator of watching the skill set of these players. And then they would identify and say, you know what, a few tweaks here and there, this guy's going to be pretty good. Or, wait a minute, what he does with that arm, there's going to be trouble in the future, and we probably should not venture into this young man and try somebody else. So those things were not in the movie in today's, 2016 range, which I'd like to see. But the overall premise of the movie was pretty good. And Clint Eastwood, you got to see a Clint Eastwood movie.
Does he ever do anything bad? I mean, everything he's in or everything he directs is sharp. It's spot on.
I wish he would have came up with his favorite phrase when he was talking to that front office guy and saying, "Make my day." That would have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting to that time in the show where I actually turn and I come out of the dugout and tap my right arm and I hand it over to the closer.
Well, let me say this: we're very fortunate and very lucky to have John Kazanis, a White Sox scout for 25 years, and getting ready to go into the June draft once more. Another big chore coming up. And John, thanks for coming on the show and enlightening myself and Mark, and I'm sure the people on the show have gotten an earful of good stuff about what it's going to take to get their son or daughter out there to college level, professional ranks, whatever. But it was really good. And thanks, John. I appreciate that.
No problem. It was a pleasure talking to both of you.
And as I'm going to say,
pleasure to have you.
Yeah, as I'm going to say as I close this thing out, throw peas in the knees, no pies in the eyes, no wall balls, and you'll be just fine.